3 True Mountain Horror Stories. Story 1. The cabin above the clouds. I never believed in anything supernatural until that week in the Colorado Rockies. My name is David, and I'm a wildlife photographer. I'd been tracking a rare species of mountain goat for a documentary, which meant spending days alone at high elevations with just my camera and camping gear. The forecast called for clear skies, so I hiked up to nearly 12,000 feet and set up camp near an abandoned ranger station. The place looked like it hadn't been used in decades. The windows were boarded up and the door hung crooked on rusted hinges. I didn't think much of it. Old buildings dot these mountains everywhere. On my second night, I woke up to singing. Not the wind, not animals. Human singing. A woman's voice, clear as crystal, singing something that sounded like a lullaby. I checked my watch. 3 in the morning. I unzipped my tent and looked around. The moon was bright enough to see for miles, but there was nobody. Just rocks and pine trees and that decrepit ranger station about 50 yards away. The singing continued for maybe 5 minutes, then stopped abruptly. I convinced myself it was just the wind playing tricks and went back to sleep. The next day I got some incredible shots of the goats and forgot all about the singing. That evening I made a fire and was reviewing my photos when I heard footsteps, heavy boots on gravel. I grabbed my flashlight and called out. No answer. The footsteps circled my camp once, twice, 3 times, then stopped at the ranger station. I heard the old door creak open. My heart was hammering. I'm not ashamed to say I was terrified. I kept my flashlight trained on that building, waiting for someone to come out. Nobody did. After 20 minutes, I worked up the courage to walk over there. I pushed the door open wider and shined my light inside. The place was gutted. No furniture, no supplies, just bare walls and a floor covered in pine needles and animal droppings. But in the dust on the floor, I saw fresh boot prints. They walked in circles around the room, then stopped in the center. Just stopped. There were no prints leading back out. I didn't sleep in my tent that night. I sat by the fire until dawn, feeding it logs, keeping it bright. When the sun came up, I packed my gear and started hiking down. I'd gotten enough footage. I was done, but here's where it gets worse. About a mile down the trail, I found a memorial plaque I hadn't noticed on my way up. It was dedicated to Sarah Chen, a park ranger who died in 1983. According to the plaque, she'd been stationed at the high-altitude outpost. One winter, she got snowed in with a broken radio. She tried to hike down in a blizzard and froze to death. They found her body 3 months later, less than a mile from the station. I looked back up the mountain. That ranger station was visible just barely through the trees. I pulled out my camera and reviewed the photos I'd taken the previous day. In 3 of them, you could see the station in the background. And in all 3, there was a figure standing in the doorway, a dark silhouette of a woman. I showed the photos to a ranger when I got back to civilization. Her face went pale. She told me other people had reported strange things up there, singing at night, footsteps, a woman's figure that appears in photos but not in person. They'd even considered demolishing the old station, but every crew they sent up reported equipment failures and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. Eventually, they just stopped trying. The ranger told me Sarah Chen had a daughter, a little girl she'd sing to every night over the radio before the equipment broke. The last transmission anyone received from Sarah was her singing a lullaby. She was trying to comfort her daughter from miles away, telling her mommy would be home soon. I never went back to that mountain, but sometimes late at night I still hear that lullaby in my head. And I wonder if Sarah is still up there, still trying to find her way home, still singing to a daughter who's now grown and probably has children of her own. Last month, I got an email from another photographer who'd been working in the same area. He attached a photo. It showed the old ranger station, and standing in the doorway was the same dark figure. But this time, the figure was holding what looked like a small bundle in her arms, like she was cradling a baby. I deleted the email and blocked the sender. Some things are better left alone. But I keep thinking about that memorial plaque, about a mother who died trying to get home to her child, about love so strong it couldn't let go even in death. The mountains are beautiful, but they remember everything. Every person who died up there. Every final moment of terror or despair. And sometimes I think they don't let go. Story 2. The hikers who weren't there. My best friend Jake and I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail for a week during the summer of 2019. We weren't trying to do the whole thing, just a section through Virginia. We'd both done plenty of hiking before, so we felt confident. Maybe too confident. On our third day, we met another pair of hikers, a man and woman, both probably in their 30s, with expensive gear and bright smiles. They introduced themselves as Marcus and Lee. They said they'd been on the trail for 2 weeks and knew some amazing spots off the main path. There was a waterfall, Marcus said, that most people never see. It was only about 2 miles off trail and the view was absolutely worth it. Jake was hesitant, but I convinced him. What's 2 miles? We had plenty of daylight left and our campsite for the night was flexible. Marcus and Lee seemed normal enough, friendly, knowledgeable. They even offered to share their water purification tablets with us if we ran low. We left the main trail around 2 in the afternoon. Marcus led the way, with Lee bringing up the rear. They chatted with us about their jobs, their travels, normal stuff. Marcus was a teacher from Ohio. Lee worked in marketing. They'd met on a hiking trip 3 years ago and had been together ever since. It all seemed perfectly ordinary, except the trail they were leading us down got narrower and narrower. The trees pressed in close, blocking out most of the sunlight. And I started noticing weird things, like how Marcus and Lee never drank any water, even though we'd been hiking uphill for over an hour. Or how their boots never made quite the right sound on the rocks. It was muffled somehow. Distant Jake noticed too. I could tell by the way he kept glancing back at me, his face tight with worry. But neither of us said anything. What were we going to say? Your footsteps sound wrong? After 2 hours of hiking, there was no waterfall. Just dense forest getting darker by the minute. I finally spoke up. Hey Marcus, how much further? We should probably head back soon. Marcus stopped walking. He turned to face us and his smile was still there, but it looked wrong now. Too wide, too fixed. Just a little further, he said. You're going to love it. Lee moved closer behind us. Not threatening exactly, but blocking the path back. It's really special, she said. Not many people get to see it. That's when Jake grabbed my arm and whispered, "Run." We bolted off the trail, crashing through underbrush, not caring about the noise. Behind us, I heard Marcus call out, "Wait, you're going the wrong way," but his voice sounded strange, echoey, like it was coming from inside a cave. We ran for what felt like forever, until Jake tripped and we both went sprawling. We lay there gasping, listening. Nothing, no footsteps, no voices. Just normal forest sounds, birds, wind in the leaves. We pulled out our GPS. According to it, we were 6 miles from the main trail. 6 miles in completely the wrong direction. We'd been walking for maybe 2.5 hours. The math didn't add up. There was no way we'd covered 6 miles in that time. It took us 4 hours of hard hiking to find the main trail again. By then it was nearly dark and we were exhausted. We made camp right there, not caring that it wasn't a designated spot. We just needed to stop. That night Jake couldn't sleep. He kept watch while I dozed fitfully. Around midnight he shook me awake. "Listen," he whispered. In the distance I heard voices. Marcus and Lee calling out to us. "We're sorry. We went too far. Come back." But the voices came from all around us. North, south, east, west. Like they were everywhere and nowhere at once. We packed up in the dark and hiked out by headlamp. We didn't stop until we hit a road and flagged down a car. The driver took us to the nearest ranger station. The ranger listened to our story with a grim expression. When we described Marcus and Lee, he opened a drawer and pulled out a file. Inside were photos, missing persons reports from 2003, a man and woman who'd vanished while hiking the trail. Their names were Marcus Chen and Lee Patterson. Their bodies had never been found. The ranger told us we were the 5th pair of hikers in the last 10 years to report meeting them. Everyone described the same thing. A friendly couple who led them off trail, deeper into the woods, always promising something beautiful just ahead. Most people got suspicious and turned back. One pair didn't. They were missing for 3 days before a search team found them, dehydrated and confused, 7 miles from where they'd left the trail. They kept insisting Marcus and Lee were real, that they'd been trying to show them something important. We asked what happened to Marcus and Lee, how they died. The ranger shook his head. That's the thing. Nobody knows. They just vanished, left their tent, their gear, everything, It was like they walked into the forest and ceased to exist. Jake and I never finished that section of the trail. We drove home the next day and never talked about it again. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd kept following them. What were they trying to show us? And more importantly, why? Story 3. The Thing in the Cave. I'm a Caver. I know that sounds crazy to most people, but there's something incredible about exploring places where no human has ever been. The silence, the darkness, the sense of discovery. It's addictive. In 2021, I joined an expedition to explore a newly discovered cave system in the Ozark Mountains. There were 5 of us, all experienced cavers with proper training and equipment. We had permits, safety protocols, emergency plans. We did everything right. The cave entrance was a narrow vertical shaft that dropped about 40 feet into a larger chamber. From there, a horizontal passage led deeper into the mountain. The first few hours were textbook. Beautiful formations, stable rock, good airflow. We mapped as we went, taking photos and measurements. Around hour 6, we reached a junction. The main passage continued straight, but there was a smaller tunnel branching off to the left. It was tight, barely wide enough to crawl through, but our instruments showed it opened up further in. Our team leader, a woman named Dr. Sarah Voss, decided we'd split up. 3 of us would continue mapping the main passage while 2 explored the side tunnel. Volunteered for the side tunnel along with a guy named Tom. We squeezed through the narrow opening and crawled for about 20 minutes. The tunnel was claustrophobic even for experienced cavers. But Sarah was right. It opened into a chamber, a huge chamber. Our helmet lights couldn't reach the far walls or ceiling. The space felt massive, cathedral-like, and it was completely silent. Not the normal silence of caves, which always have some sound. Dripping water, air movement. This was absolute silence, like the cave was holding its breath. Tom and I spread out to map the chamber. That's when I saw them. Scratches on the wall. Long, deep gouges in the rock running parallel to each other, like claw marks but huge. Each mark was easily 6 inches long. Tom, look at this. My voice sounded wrong in that silence. Flat. Dead. Tom came over and examined the marks. Probably from mining equipment. This area had some coal operations back in the day. But these weren't tool marks. They were too organic. Too chaotic. And they were everywhere once I started looking. The walls, the floor, even the ceiling where we could see it. Something had torn at the rock with incredible force. We should have left then, but we were scientists, curious, stupid. We decided to do a quick survey of the chamber before heading back. That's when our lights started failing. Not dying exactly. They'd flicker, dim, then come back. But during those flickers, in the split seconds of darkness, I heard something. Movement. Something large, shifting position in the dark. Tom heard it too. We need to go, now. We moved back toward the tunnel entrance, but in the dark between flickers, the sound got closer. And I smelled something. A thick, organic smell. Like rotten meat and wet fur and something else. Something that made my hindbrain scream danger. Our lights went out completely. Total darkness. The kind of darkness that doesn't exist on the surface. The kind that presses against your eyes like a physical weight. In that darkness, something breathed. A long, rattling inhale. Close enough that I felt the air movement. Then silence again. Tom grabbed my arm. We stood frozen, not daring to breathe, not daring to move. My light flickered back on for just a second. Long enough to see there was something in the chamber with us. Something massive. I can't describe it properly because I only saw it for a fraction of a second, and my brain refused to process what my eyes were showing me. It was pale, hairless, wrong. Its limbs bent in directions that didn't make sense, and its face, if you could call it that, was just a mass of sensory organs I couldn't identify. Then darkness again. We ran. We didn't think, didn't plan, just ran blindly toward where we thought the tunnel entrance was. Tom was screaming. I was screaming. Our lights flickered on and off, giving us strobe-like glimpses of the chamber. Each flash showed the thing closer, moving impossibly fast, not running exactly, more like flowing across the rock. By pure luck, we found the tunnel. We threw ourselves into it and crawled as fast as we could. The tunnel was too small for that thing to follow. It had to be. Please God, let it be too small. Behind us, I heard scraping, the sound of rock being torn away. It was widening the tunnel. We crawled faster, faster than should be possible in such a tight space. We tore our clothes, bloodied our elbows and knees. We didn't care. We just had to get out. We exploded back into the main passage where the rest of our team was waiting. They saw our faces and didn't ask questions. Sarah just said, "Out. Everyone out now." We made it to the surface in record time. When we were all above ground, safe in the daylight, Sarah sealed the cave entrance with explosives she'd brought for emergency use. The entire hillside collapsed, burying the cave system under tons of rock. We filed our report saying the cave was unstable and unsafe for exploration. Nobody argued. Nobody asked too many questions. I think Sarah had seen something in our faces that convinced her not to push for details. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night. Before we sealed the cave, while we were preparing the explosives, I looked at the rock around the entrance. There were scratches, the same claw marks we'd seen inside, except these were on the outside of the mountain, leading down from higher up. Whatever that thing was, it didn't originate in that cave. It came from somewhere else, somewhere higher up in the mountains. And that cave we found, that wasn't its home. It was just a place it hunted. I never went caving again. None of us did. And when I hear about new cave systems being discovered in those mountains, I feel sick, because somewhere up there in the dark places where no human has ever been, that thing is still waiting, still hunting, and maybe there are more of them.